Welcome to this video, where we will talk about the movie Avatar: Fire and the Ash. We will begin by exploring the movie's storyline, summarizing its plot, and discuss the cast and characters. Then, we will take a closer look at the film production details and box office performance. Finally, we will share review and audience reaction to give you a well-rounded perspective. Let's get started. Avatar 3 box office hits $1.4 billion worldwide but falls short of the predecessor. Directors James Cameron, Avatar Fire and the Ash, is losing the moment at the box office after a largely successful month-long run and running out of time to catch up with its the record. Breaking the predecessors, the movie is still trailing the original Avatar release in 2009 by about $1.5 million worldwide. Even the middle film, Avatar The Way of the Water, defined the odds to gross $2.3 billion at the worldwide box office. Avatar 3, on the other hand, opened to the lukewarm review and became the first film in the trilogy not to receive a Best Pictures moment at the Oscars. In fact, it was the instantly substance, earning just two nominations in the totals. Deposit these the setbacks in has joined Avatars, and the Avatar 2 is passing the coveted $1 billion miles at the international box office. The film has grossed an additional $378 million domestically for a domestic global haul of the nearly $1.4 billion, while the movie will probably hit the $400 million market domestically and the $1.4 billion mark worldwide before the end of its run. These might be the final milestone that it passes. If this turns out to be the true, Avatar 3 will be the view as an the underperformer simply because it will be the compared to its the overachieving predecessors. Avatar is the highest grossing film in history, while Avatar 2 is the third biggest film of all time. Cameron Titanic, which was released in the 1997, is the fourth biggest hit ever with the more than $2.2 billion. In the world box office revenge, with the Avatar 3, the Cameron became the first filmmaker to direct a $4 billion hits in a row. The future of the Avatar franchise is the uncertain. Produced on a reported budget of the $400 million, Avatar is the currently among the 20 highest grossing movie in worldwide box office history. It recently overtook the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Deadpool and the Wolverine, Black Panthers and the Star Wars Episode 3. The last jets on the all-time charts domestically, the film is sitting at the 61st spot on all-time credits, behind Finding Nemo and the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Avatar 3 holds a series low 66% score on the creator's website's Rotten Tomatoes, and its box office performance so far has cast doubt on the franchise features. While the Cameron originally announced plans for two more review, no film update have been made about them in the quite some time. You can watch Avatar 3 in theaters and stay tuned to the colliders for the more updates. Avatar Fire Ash, the all box office record broken. When it comes to an Avatar movie, it's always about their detail at the domestic and the global box office. That's not just because of their the runtime, but also how they launch in the pre-Christmas corridors and find their guests throughout the year and the holiday stretch into the journey. Audience want the best stars to watch this. The James Cameron directed 3D spectacles and will wait to get them released. That the Cameron owns the number 1, number 3 and number 4 spots on the list of the highest grossing movie of all time with the 2009 Avatar's $2.92 billion worldwide. 2022 Avatar's The Way of Water $2.34 billion WW and the Titanic's $2.26 billion WW. No other filmmakers can boast their spots in the top 10 picks of all time. Not Steven Spielberg, not the Christopher Nolan, however the Russo brothers do own two spots with the number 2 Avengers Endgame at the $2.799 and the number 7 Avengers Infinity War at the $2.05 and their Avengers Dom said he comes out a year from the now. They are the features film have now the earned over the $5.6 billion to date globally, which inside Fire and the Ash opening. We'll keep refreshing this list as it's about the end result and awaiters Fire and the Ash, but here how it shocked out this the weekend at the 347 million and second biggest global opening ever for the James Cameron behind a waterway of the water at the $441.7 million, not in like for the likes but the historicals reported at $89 million, second biggest domestic opening for a Cameron behind a waterway of water $134.1 million, second biggest MPA global opening of the 2025 behind the Zootopia 2, $560.3 million and ahead of the Lilo Stitch, $341 million. Box office Avatar 3 leads in the first weekend of the 2026 with the $40 billion. The Housemaid's price $75 million. Avatar 5 and the Ash is the towering over the domestic box office during the first weekend of the new year. James Cameron laced Navy Adventure has collected $40 million from the 3,825 North American theaters in its third weekend of release, declining 35% from the busy spot Christmas frame. Those ticket sales, the purchasing the third Avatar to $602 million domestically and the $1.08 billion globally after just the 80 days in theaters. Fire and the Ash crossed the awaited $1 billion benchmark slower than the 2022 Avatar. The Way of Water, which took the 40 days, and the original Avatar, which took the 17 days. Now it's a matter of where Avatar Fire and the Ash will drop out at the box office, and Avatar the third installment has the stamens to the surprise $2 billion like its installment has the stamens to the surprise $2 billion like this it's the predecessor. Avatar, Fire and the Ash is the towering over the domestic box office during the first weekend of the new year. James Cameron latest the Navy adventure has collected $40 billion from the 3,825 North American theaters in its third weekend of release, declining 35% from the busy spot Christmas frame. Those ticket sales are the presents the third awaiters to the $306 million domestically and the $1.08 billion globally after just the 80 days in the theaters. Fire and the Ash crossed the covered billions dollar benchmark slower than the 2022 Avatars, The Way of Water, which took the 40 days, and the original Avatar, which took the 17 days. Now it's the matter of the where Avatar Fire and the Ash will top out at the box office, and whatever the third installment has the statement to. The surprise $2 billion like it's the predecessor. Since journey is often declical in terms of the movie theaters attendance, Hollywood studio rarely release anything new around the dawns of the new year. That means a smarting of the Thanksgiving and Christmas leftovers such as the Zootopia 2, The Housemaid and the Mighty Super were behind A Video Fire and the Ash on the North American characters. Destinies appear to remain as the force at number 2 with the $90 million from the 285 Venice, marketing a minimal 4% drop from the previous weekend. After 6 weekends of release, the beloved animated sequel has grossed a mighty $363 million domestically and $1.588 billion globally. Zootopia 2 recently the outperformance for Season 2 $1.45 billion to become Walt Disney Animation highest grossing movie of all time. That means the announcement of a third terror to the animal field. Metropolis can't be too far off. Destiny Zopier 2 remains a force at the number 2 with a $90 million from the 3,285 Venices, making a minimal 4% drop from the previous weekend after 6 weekends of release. The beloved animated sequel has grossed a mighty $363 million domestically and $1.588 billion globally. Zopier 2 recently outperforming Horizon to $1.45 billion to become the Walt Disney Animation's highest grossing movie of all time. That means the announcement of a third trip to the animal field Metropolis can't be too far off. Long Stay, the psychological thriller The Housemaid, rose to number 3 with the $50.2 million from the 3017 screen, a barely theaters 1% drip from the period weekends. The R-rated film starring Sydney Swincy and the Amanda Seyfried has earned an impressive $75.7 million in North America and the $133 million worldwide against a 35% million budget. Fourth place went to the A24's Matthew Superman with the $20.5 million from the 2,887 locations. Deadline just the 30% from the spot Christmas frame. So for the tomato climate-led Pinks, Pang Trami has the generated $56 million in the North America, a great result for the original author's release with those the re-ticket sales. Mary Superhero has the outgrossed the director's Joe Saffer's period film The Uncut Scams $50 million globally and ranked among A24's biggest movie of all time. However, the mighty superhero cost $70 million to the predecessor, making it movie of all time. However, mighty superhero cost $70 million to the predecessors, moving it the most expensive film to date for A24. It will be need to remain a draw into the new year to justify its budgets. Sony action comedy Anaconda remains at the fifth place with the $10 million from the 3,059 theaters, a drop of the 31% from the period weekends after 2 weekends of release. The meta reboot of the 197th Anaconda, this one the starting Jack Black and Pure Rude, has grossed $45.8 million in the North America and the $88 million globally against a $45 million predecessor budget. 31% from the period weekend after 2 weekends of release. The meta reboot of the 1997's Anaconda, this one the starting Jack Black and the Pure Rude, has grossed $45.8 million in the North America and the $88 million globally against a $45 million production budget. Another Christmas release, the focus features musical drama Sona Sings Blues, led to the number 8 spot with the $5.87 million from the 2,705 Venices, a scant 70% drop. So for the tearjackers led by Hugh Jackman and the Kettle Hansons, as the performance in a Neil Diamond's cover brand has the gross $25 million domestically and the $30 million. All thought the year is the very young 2026 is already packing ahead of the 2025 by the $26.5 million according to the Camp Cross. Last year the revenge hit $8.9 million across 12 months, are the modest 1.5% increase from the 2024, though just short of the $9 billion that the analyst had expected the industry to generate. As the studio prepared to an even major blockbuster included the Avengers, Doomsday Spider-Man, Brand New Day, Christopher Nolan, The Odyssey, and the superhero major Galaxy movie will this year gross manage to the return to pre-pandemic heist. With a killer slate on the docks, there the confidence that the 2026 will be the biggest year for theatre since 2020, predicts Cameron ahead of the marketplace trend Pure Dagria Bardens. Now Hollywood just needs the audience to show up at the multiples. Avatar 3 box office terms over the game, changing Steven Spielberg epic. Another week, another impressive audition to the Avatar Fire and the Ash. Already powerful box office tools, James Cameron is no stranger to delivering Spectacular cinema. Whatever that be in the Aliens, Terminators to the Judgment Day, Titanic or all three a better film, but this is not the only name. Interstitials linked to the blockbusters in the fact Cameron big screen legacy was the made all the more possible thanks to the Steven Spielberg with his the movie Joe in the 1975 even helping cement the notice of a blockbuster you see back in the 1975 you could not use your the iPhone to order tickets ahead of time resulting in lines forming around the movie theater's interior block. This past weekend box office totals have taken fire and the age to the $401.3 million domestically which the contributes to its $1.5 billion worldwide. These domestic totals push the third awaited film past Jurassic Park original box office run of the $357.1 million in the 30 plus years since the original release of the Jurassic Park. Its official domestic total in the $4,017.2 million and with the fire and the age earning roughly $4 billion this the past week. We don't be the surprise if the sequel surprises that the total in the near futures. As far as how the legacy of the Witcher franchise with the legacy of the Jurassic Park franchise compares, it's a complicated story though both franchises have disseminated their place in the analysis of the cinema for the ways CGI has the revelated storytelling, the battle between box office behemoths. In addition to passing the original run of the Jurassic Park and the standing up on its the re-release totals avatars, Fire and the Ash has become over 5 of the Stephen Jurassic movie and their original domestic release so far. The theatrical's domestic total has also it passed the lows for Jurassic Park World Truth, Juicy Word Domains, and the Juicy Word Wrapped in Wildfire and the Age Worldwide total puts in ahead of the almost every installment in the Juicy franchise, with only the 2015 Juicy Word overshadowing it. With their the installment under its the felt the Waiter franchise $6.7 million worldwide total is not too far off the Juicy franchise $6.9 million though the significant difference is the Cameron series has the second this total with the only 3 films compared to the Juicy 7 when pitting the filmmakers against one another regards of the genre of franchise Cameron directed films have taken in just over the $10 million with a dozen films while Spielberg has the second roughly $10.7 million with the early 30 movies. Could this be the super of the Spielberg? In addition to the Jaws and the Jurassic Park, Spielberg has delivered summer spectacles like the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the multiple Indiana Jones sequel, E.T. the Extraterrestrial AI War of the World, Minority Report, and the Saving Private Ryan. The filmmaker was largely a stifles of the summer movie, though he the focus more on human contact stories over the epic for more than a decade since 2011, however, we have been given movies like The Post, The Fableman's Lincoln, and The Breach of the Spies. With the closed, he's gotten to a spectacles being 2018 Ready Play Awards. That all could change this summer though, as he's the unleashing Disclairs Team, a title that the long referred to as the Steven Spielberg Yuffie of movie, early the glimpse at the movie taste Alien Encounters movie akin to the close encounter of the third kind, the War of the Worlds. The given how much the screen has the surrounded the project, the upcoming experience could deliver some things nobody was the accepting, and the filmmaker could regain his the crown as the kind of the summer blockbuster. James Cameron, on the other hand, seems to be trapped on the Pandora indefinitely. Avatar 4 gets the in coverage redactions update from the Pixar as Fire and the Ash hits digital. James Cameron may soon be the returning to the Pandora for Avatar Force, arriving 2 years after the emotional Avatars, The Way of Water ending. Avatar Fire and the Ash hit theaters in the Decembers continue the story of the Jack Slew, Sam the Worthings and his the family, though it has been announced that a fourth and the fifth film will release in 2029 and 2031. The perspective Cameron has been open about the continue of the saga not being a sure things. Now in an interview with the Screen Rant, Titanic's holders for Avatar's Fire Age home release on the March 31 franchise executive producer Ray Ranchi reveals that now, in an interview with the Screen Rant, the Titanic's holder for Avatar's Fire and the Ash home reveals on the 31 March. French's executive producer Ryu Renchi reveals that the start of the producer on the Avatar 4 may not be for of Senchini's test that the work will have to get going on the fourth and the fifth movie pretty soon because of the immense amount of the prep required. Sanchini awaited for a bread which comes ahead of the film 4K, UHD and Blu-ray release on the 19 March. Flow of questions about whatever Cameron could be the starting word on his the long gathering fantastic yoga adaptation this year. Check out there the full comment below. It could be the fantastic Vigo has. I have been long in the work and we are the moving forward and can't announce anything, but we are in the work coming up in the very early stage. That's been kind of a dream project of ours for some time, and then the Witcher film are very long lead times projects, so we are going to have to get started on those pretty soon as well. And then James Scott and other few things that he always kicking around. Sure, a lot of the original ideas. Sachin's comments arrive following a premising about from the Cameron at the stern awaited earlier in March. To perfectly be clear, we have not even made our decisions to move forward, Cameron sighed. But should I do that? Which I will say it likely but no 100%. We will definitely learn from the lesson of all three films. It should also be noticed that the Destiny recently shared an update, released the calendar, and Avatar 4 and the Avatar 5 are both still the scheduled for the 2029 and the 2031 respectively. Avatar movies, historicals have long pre-productions period and the post-production process which has led to some debut recording whatever. It should be also noted that the Destiny recently shared an update, release calendars, and Avatar 4 and the Avatar 5 are both still the scheduled for the 2029 and the 2031 respectively. Avatar movie historicals have long pre-productions production and the post-production process which has led to some the debut recording whatever these the dates could actually be hit. Avatar, Fire and the Age may not have repeated the success of The Way of Water, but it was still the broadly a success for the Destiny, making it not a surprise that the company want to finish the saga. The third installment grossed $1.485 million worldwide, comprising $404 million domestic and the $1.0881 billion from the overseas. On Rotten Tomatoes, the third film took a bite of a dip with the critical and the currently stand at the lukewarm 66%. A Bitter Fire and the Ash review praised the film stunning visuals and the exploitation action sequence, but the film did face some the criticism for feeling too similar to The War of the Water with the audience. However, the third adventure in the Silly family saga hold a much stronger 90%. These deserts follow the way of the water, 92% audience score and the 76% criticized scores. Many questions remain about the story for the Avatars 4, but a larger protection of the film's first act has already been the film, and it is accepted to the features a significant time jump. Though the Cameron himself has not yet come out and confirmed this, the return to pandemic sunshine comments suggest it may just be a matter of time. A Water, Fire and Ashbox hits major milestone, but in the Chaplin, the time that the OG movie took. A Water, Fire and the Ash has hit a major box office milestone, but it is still being the score by the other two movie in the franchise. The Avatar Fire and the Ash release kick off on the 19 December 2025 with the second biggest debut of the James Cameron sci-fi trilogy. It quickly climbed past the billions-dollar mark worldwide and currently stands as the 16th high-grossing movie of all time behind 2022 Top Gun's Maverick, which earned $1.496 billion worldwide. Per the numbers, A Water Fire and the Ash hit a cumulative total of the $403 million at the domestic box office on the Friday. This makes it the fifth movie in history to review past the huge $400 million domestic milestone. However, it took 71 days for it to squeak past that the number, which is the significantly slower than the both of its the predecessor. The original 2009 movie crossed the $400 million milestone on the third day of its re-release, while its more flat-footed sequel 2022 The Way of Water did not so in just the 16 days. Both of the original Avatar movie ultimately grossed more than the $2 billion worldwide and they stand as the first and the third highest grossing movie of all time respectively. Considering what a massive hit 2026 A Water Fire and the Ash is, it does not the necessary need to be in all time reported break at the level of the previous two movies in order to be the considered a success. However, if the franchise is hit with the future's diminishing return, it could quickly develop into a stand of the extraordinary flop thanks to the movie's huge budget. Fire and the Ash reportedly cost hugely $400 million because the blockbuster movie often need to be earned back 2.5 times that the budgets in theaters. This could place the movie estimated break-even point as the high as the $1 billion, while the movie has the surprise that the number and is earning the $1.5 million market at its the theatrical run slow down. A similar process sequel might not perform as well. If the potential Avatar 4 falls behind Avatar Fire and the Ash to the same degree that the new movie has fallen behind The Way of the Water, it would only end up earning roughly $970 million, which could ultimately see it lose money in theaters. While it could make up the define on the VOD and the physical media, a fifth installment might not be so lucky if box office totals continue to drop. Enjoy Screen Rant box office coverage. Click below to sign up for the May weekly box office news shelter. Make sure to check box office in your performance and get executed analysis, pre-sections and more. Avatar 3 box office continue a Q series trend. Avatars Fire and the Ash box office result continue a visual box office trend for the Avatar series that has the presence for each installment of the film franchise. Avatar's stunning Intel box office success back in the 2009 set a high bar for the new sequel in the series, since it was clearly anything less than the strictly high official results would be the somethings of a letdown for a follow-up film. Thus for the series, sequel have not failed to the gathers on the 1B plus box office result, further fleshing out the franchise and making more installment a visible possibility. Avatar Fire and the Ash run is not over quite yet, but the 2025 film has already managed to follow up on a box office trend established by the previous release that the bodies well for the franchise respective features. Avatar Fire and the Ash continue the series 1B plus instant box office trend. Avatar Fire and the Ash has the amused itself a healthy $1.4 billion boxly. Avatar Fire and the Ash has the itself a healthy $1.4 billion box office result, which is still likely to grow given the movie is not yet done with its theatrical run. However, where many movie trend to draw the largely part of their earning from the domestic gross, Avatar Fire and the Ash has instead flipping the script, much like the both of its predecessor. Instead, $1 billion of Avatar Fire and Ash collective $1.4 million box office results some from the external audience. As per the numbers, continue the franchise track record of the tracking 1 billion minimum in the international market with the each film. Ultimately, this details is instead $1 billion of Avatar Fire and the Age collective $1.4 billion box office result come from the international audience. As per the numbers, continue the franchise track record of the reaching $1 billion minimums in the international market with the each film. Ultimately, this details is the absolutely paramount to the series' success for the more than one reason. Why the Waiter series need to keep the earning 1B plus with its the international box office record. Of course, the most pressing reasons the Waiter series ideally need to the keep earning 1.B billions with its the international box office is because this is a huge amount for the any film franchise to the constantly make in this the market, and because it helps balance out the constables badly requirement of this film due to the immensely detailed VFX work needed to the craft the NIV characters and their world. This is made even more the paramount by the fact that no Avatar movie that made $1 billion in the domestic box office result, with the Avatar results being closer but still are not able way away at the $788 million as such, keeping the interest of international audience is even more the cruise for the franchise following Avatar Fire and the Ash, especially since engaging worldwide audience show the universal appeal of the stories being told in the story too. Avatar Fire and the Ash hits huge box office milestone, still less than the half of the OG movie total gross. Avatar Fire and the Ash is the burning up the charts, but it still can't compare with its the success. 2025 Avatar Fire and the Ash is the hitting yet another huge milestone as it the continue to rake in the money at the box office. That the third installment in the James Cameron blockbuster sci-fi franchise, which the debut on the December 19 is the currently the third the highest grossing 2025 re-release worldwide, and the second highest grossing movie put out by the 20th Century Studios since they took on that name is the 2020. Per the numbers as of the Sunday morning, Avatar Fire and the Ash is projected to hit a cumulative global box office total of the $1.440 billion by the end of its the seventh weekend in theaters. This total comprises $386.1 million from the domestic box office and the additional 1.0228 billion from the international markets. This means that The Avatar's Fire and the Ash will become just the 19th movie in history to pass the $1.4 billion milestone. In the process, it has passed the $1.405 billion gross of the 2015's Avengers Age of the Ultrons to become the 18th highest grossing movie of all time. However, in spite of the hitting this the huge milestone, it is still the struggling to keep up with the either of the two previous Avatar movie. In fact, it has the earned less than the half of the global theatrical total of the original 2009 movie, which made $2.924 billion worldwide and remains the highest grossing movie of all time. Additionally, it has so far only grossed the 61% of the 2.323 billion earned by the franchise's second installment 2022 Avatar's The Way of the Water. It ultimately remains to be seen how the Height Fire and the Ash can decline by the end of its the theatrical run. One good signs in the fact that it's the show very strong audience reactions during its the seventh weekend at the domestic box office, falling a slim 40% from its the gross of the previous weekend. Additionally, the Avatar Fire and the Ash release does not face strong director competition from the any incoming 2026 tentpoles until March, which sees the debut of the Pixar Hopper and the Rihanna Gosling sci-fi movie Project Hail Mary. However, it is the nathless showing down, so it the seems doubtful that it will be able to follow the in footsteps of its predecessor and pass the $2 billion milestone. The fate of the potential Avatar 4 could be on the lines become the Avatar's Fire and the Ash, reportedly cost $400 billion, which could place its break-even point as the high as $1 billion. It is the unknown what level of the profitability it would be need to reach in order for the big budget. The fate of the potential Avatar 4 could be on the line because Avatar Fire and the Ash reportedly cost $4 billion, which the could place it break even point as the highest as the $1 billion. It is the unknown what level of the potentials it would need to reach in order for the big budget franchise to continue with the further installment, enjoy screen run box office coverage. Click below to sign up for the May weekly box office newsletters. Make sure to check box office in your the performance and get the absolute analysis, predictor and more. Avatar 4 gets in coverage productions update from the producer as far as Ash hits the digital. James Cameron may soon be the returning to the Pandora for Avatar Force. Arriving 2 years after the emotional Avatar The Way of the Water ending, Avatar Fire and the Ash hit theaters in December, continuing the story of the Jake Sully, Sam Washington and his family, though it has been announced that a fourth and the fifth movie will release in 2029 and 2031 respectively. Cameron has been open about the continue of the saga not being a sure things. Note in an review with the Screen Rant, Titanic holders for the Avatars, Fire and the Ash home release on the March 31. Franchise executed by success. Ria Sanchini reveals that the star of the productions on the Avatar 4 may not be too far off. Sanchini stressed that the work will have to get going on the fourth and the fifth movie pretty soon because of the immense amount of the prep required. Sanchini Avatar 4 update, which comes ahead of the film 4K UHD and Blu-ray release on the 19 May, follows a questions about the whatever Cameron could be the starting work on his the long guesting fantastic Vokia adaptation this year. Check out her full comment below. It could be the fantastic yoga has been low in the work and we are moving forward and can't announce anything, but we are in the work coming up in every early stage. That's been kind of a dream project of ours from the sometimes, and then the Avatars films are a very long lead time process, so we are going to have get started on those pretty soon as well. And then James got another few things that he always kicking around, sure a lot of the original ideas. Sanchini comment arrives following a promising update from the Cameron at the Strand awarded earlier in March. To perfectly be clear, we have not even made a decisions to move forward, Cameron said, but should I do that, which I will say it likely but not 100%, we will definitely learn from the lessons of all three films. It should also be noticed that the Destiny recently shared an update release calendar and Avatar Force and the Avatar 5s are both still scheduled for the 2029 and 2031 respectively. Avatar's movie historicals have long pre-productions, production and post-production processor which has led to some debut regarding whatever these dates could actually he hit. It should be also noted that the Destiny recently shared an update release calendars and Avatar 4 and Avatar 5 are both still scheduled for the 2029 and 2031 respectively. Avatar movie historicals have long pre-productions, productions and the most production process which has led to some debut regarding whatever these dates could actually be built. Avatar Fire and the Ash may not have the repeatedly the success of the Way of War, but it may still board a success for Destiny, making it no surprise that the company wants to finish the saga. The third installment crossing $1.485 billion worldwide, comprising $404 million domestic and the $1.081 billion from the overseas. On Rotten Tomatoes, the third film took a bite of a dip with the critics and they currently stand at a lukewarm 66%. A Waiter Fire and the Ash review precedes the film, stunning visuals and the expectational action sequence, but the film did face some criticisms for feeling too similar to The Way of the Water. With the audience, however, the third adventure in the Silly Family saga holds a much stronger 90%. These can follow The Way of Water 92% audience score and the 76% criticized score. Many questions remain about the story for the Avatar 4, but a larger portion of the film's first act has already been filmed and it is accepted to feature a significant time jump. Thody Cameron himself has not yet come out and reconfirmed his returns to the Pandora Sashni comments suggest it may just be a matter of time. Avatar Fire and the Ash box office hits major milestone but in the traps the time that the OG movie took. Avatar Fire and the Ash has hit a major box office milestone, but it is still being scored by the other two movies in the franchise. The Avatar Fire and the Ash release kick off on the December 19, 2025 with the second biggest debut of the James Cameron sci-fi trilogy. It quickly climbed past the billions-dollar mark worldwide and currently stands as the sixth highest grossing movie of all time behind the 2022 Top Gun's movie track which earned $1.496 billion worldwide. Per the numbers, Avatar Fire and the Ash hit a cumulative total of the $400.3 million at the domestic box office on Friday. This makes it the fifth movie in history to review past the huge $400 million domestic milestone. However, it took the 71 days for it to squeak past that the number, which is the significantly slower than the both of its predecessors. The original 2009 movie crossed the $400 million milestone on the third day of its release, while its more fleet-footed sequel, 2022 The Way of Water, did so in just 16 days. Both of the original Avatar movies ultimately grossed more than the $2 billion worldwide and stand as the first and the third highest grossing. The original 2009 movie crossed the $400 million milestone on the third day of its release, while its more footage sequel, 2022 The Way of Water, did so in just 16 days. Both of the original Avatar movie ultimately grossed more than the $2 billion worldwide and stand as the first and the third highest grossing movie of all time respectively. Considering what a massive hit the 2026 Avatar Fire and the Ash is, it does not necessarily need to be an all-time record breakout at the level of the previous two movies in order to be considered a success. However, if the franchise is hit with the further diminishing returns, it could quickly develop into a style of the extraordinary flop thanks to the movie's huge budget. Fire and the Ash reportedly cost usually $400 million because the blockbuster movie often need to earn back 2.5 times their budget in theaters. This could place the movie estimated break-even point as high as $1 billion, while the movie has surprised that the number and is. Fire and the Ash reportedly cost huge $400 million because blockbuster movies often need to earn back 2.5 times their budget in theaters. This could place the movie estimated break-even point as high as the $1 billion, while the movie has surpassed that number and is near the $1.5 billion mark as its theatrical run slowed down. A similar price sequel might not perform as well if the potential Avatar 4 falls behind Avatar Fire and the Ash to the same degree that the new movie has fallen behind The Way of the Water. It would not only end up earning roughly $970 million, which could If the potential Avatar 4 falls the behind Avatar Fire and the Ash to the same degree that the new movie has fallen behind The Way of Water, it would only end up earning roughly $907 million, which could ultimately see it lose money in the theaters, while it could make up the deflect on the VOD and physical media. A fifth installment might not be so lucky if box office totals continue to drop. Enjoy Screen Rant box office coverage. Click below to sign up for the May weekly box office newsletter. Make sure to check box office in your performance and get executed analysis, predictions, and more. Avatar 3 box office continue a crucial story trend. Avatar Fire and the X box office result continue a visual box office trend for the Avatar series that has present for each installment of the film franchise. Avatar starting international box office success back in the 2009 set a higher bar for a never sequel in the series, since it was the clearly anything less than the stringly high visual result would be the something of a letdown for a follow-up film. Therefore, this series sequel have not failed to the genre their own 1B plus box office result, further fleshing out the franchise and making more installment a viable possibility. Avatar Fire and the Ash run is not over quite yet, but the 2025 film has already managed to follow up on a box office trend established by the previous release that embodies well for the franchise's prospective features. Avatar, Fire and the Ash continue the series' 1B positive international box office trend. Avatar Fire and the Ash has amused itself a healthy $1.4 billion box office result, which is still likely to grow given the movie is not yet down, which is the theatrical run. However, where many movies tend to draw the larger part of their earnings from their domestic gross, Avatar Fire and the Ash has instead flipped the script much like both of its predecessors. Instead, $1 billion of Avatar Fire and the Ash collective $1.4 billion box office result came from the international audience as per the numbers, continuing the franchise track record of the reaching $1 billion minimum in the international market with the each film. Ultimately, this details is the absolutely paramount to the series' success for more than one reason. Why the Avatar series need to keep earning 1B billions with its the international box office packets. Of course, the most possessing seasons, the Avatar series ideals need to keep earning 1 billion plus with its the international box office is because this is a huge amount for any film franchise to constantly make in this market, and because it helps balance out the considerable budgetary requirement of these films due to the immensely detailed VFX work needed to craft the Navy characters and their world. This is made even more the paramount by the fact that no Avatars movie has made $1 billion in their domestic box office result, with the Avatar results being close but still a notable way away at the $788 million, such as keeping the interest. This is made even more paramount by the fact that no Avatar movie has made $1 billion in their domestic box office result, with the Avatar result being close but still a notable way away at the $788 million, such as keeping the interest of international audience is even more crucial for the franchise following Avatar's Fire and the Ash, especially since engaging worldwide audience show the universal appeal of the stories behind told in the series too. Avatar Fire and the Ash hits huge box office milestone, still less than half of OG movie total gross. Avatar Fire and the Ash is burning up the crashes, but it still can't compare with its predecessors. 2025 Avatar Fire and Ash is the hitting yet another huge milestone as it continue to rack in money at the box office. The third installment in James Cameron blockbuster sci-fi franchise, which the debut on 19 December, is currently the third highest-grossing 2025 release worldwide and the second highest-grossing movie put out by the 20th Century Studios since they took on that name in the 2020. At the numbers as of the Sunday morning, A Waiter Fire and the Ash is the project to hit a cumulative global box office total of the $1.440 billion by the end of its the seventh weekend in theaters. This total comprises $386.1 million from the domestic box office and additional $1.028 billion from international market. This means that A Waiter's Fire and the Ash will become just ninth movie in history to pass the $1.4 billion milestone. In the process, it has purchased the 1.405 billion crores of the 2015 Avengers Age of the Ultron to become the 18th highest grossing movie of all time. However, in spite of hitting this the huge milestone, it is still struggling to keep up with the either of the two previous Avatar movie. In fact, it has earned less than the half of the global theatrical total of the original 2009 movie, which made the $2.924 billion worldwide and remains the highest grossing movie of all time. Additionally, it has so far only grossed the 61% of the $2.323 billion earned by the franchise's second installment, 2022 Awaited the Way of Water. 2022 Awaited the Way of Water. It ultimately remains to be seen how high Fire and the Ash can climb by the end of its theatrical run. One good sign in the fact that it's the show. It ultimately remains to be seen how high Fire and the Ash can climb by the end of its theatrical run. One good sign in the fact that it showed very strong audience reactions during its the seventh weekend at the domestic box office, falling a slim 40% from its the grossing of the previous weekends. Additionally, the Avengers Fire and the Ash release does not face strong direct competitions from any incomes 2026 tentpoles until the March, which sees the debut of the Pixar's Hopper and the Rihanna Gosling sci-fi movie project Hail Mary. However, it is the nevertheless showing down, so it seems doubtful that it will be able to follow in the additionally, the Avatar's Fire and the Ash release does not face strong direct competitions from any incomes 2026 tentpoles until March, which sees the debut of Pixar's Hoppers and the Rena Gosling sci-fi movie project Hail Mary. However, it is the nevertheless slowing down, so it seems doubtful that it will be able to follow in the footsteps of its predecessors and the past $2 billion milestone. The fate of the potential Avatar 4 could be on the line because Avatar Fire and the Ash reportedly cost $400 billion, which could place its break-even point as the high as $1 billion. It is the unknown what level of the profitable it would need to reach in order for the big budget. The fate of the potential Avatar 4 could be on the line because Avatar Fire and the Ash reportedly cost $400 million, which would be place its break-even point as high as $1 billion. It is unknown what level of the profitable it would be need to reach in order for the big budget franchise to continue with the further installment. Enjoy Screen Rant box office coverage. Click below to sign up for my weekly box office newsletters. Make sure to check box office in your the performance and get the executed analysis, predictor and more. Avatar most heartbreaking state act is a secret even the Superwoman mix. As the Avatar series has the expanded into a as the Avatar series has the expanded into a thriving world of the tribes, cultures, and the indigenous aliens, traditions, the amount of time and energy poured into every piece of the clothing, tattoo, or jewelry seems endless, but as avatars, fire and the ash welcome even more Navy people and the traditional into the canon. One of the most beautiful details is the generated to go the unnoticed by even devoted fans of the series. The secret let no navy neck go the unexpected. Almost every awaited death is the remember with one the secret tribute. With so many at the play, it is easy to understand why repeated choice or the inherited one can pass by a viewer's attention, and that being from the very first days on the Pandora in the first Avatar movie. A deleted scenes cut from the Avatar theatrical versions gives a deeper look at the schools operated by the Dr. Grace Augustine significations where this the outreach begins Grace connections to the Olympic with a special bond formed between her and the slave Neytiri or sister. Tragical, the second would be the close after a shooting involving RDA Sky Ops, seeing the adolescents and the rebelling Navy as the violent increment Salman was killed ending the humanity link to. Tragically, the school would be closed after a shooting involving RDA, second ops, seeing the adolescents and the rebelling Navy as the violent instruments. Slavin was killed, ending humanity linked to the Omithia, but the eagles-eyed fans will note that the grace still wears Salvin's pendant around the neck over the Navy aviators that the traditionals would pose to the sequel without any the influence from the Grace herself as well the young Carrie and not only visit Grace as her daughter but wear her the necklace through the following films as well yet it is the passing of the jewelry or dress in the tribute to a lost family member's friend or the ally that the proves that's the most powerful but it also happened to be the details last comments on the tearfuls most missing by the audience. And if the sudden appearance of the Jake Sully in the Cambrol's neckwear worn by the virile neckwear worn by his the revoltant loyal the soldiers tested following the latest death pull at the your heart string than the gems Cameron speak the best for avatars fire and the ash. In Avatar Fire and the Ash, nurturing wear her grief around her neck. Yes, while it is almost impossible to notice amidst the intact clothing and the paint, Natria wear is the mourning the neckwear worn by her oldest son, Nathan's, now the recent around his mother thought when the third film The Pinks, the first appearing during the funeral scenes for the Nathians which close awaited the way of water, so decision to open the third film directly awaited tell audience everything they need to know about the Natrian emotional state. It's not an the overstatement to say that the color literally representing that the sentiments, regards and the loss which the weight on the nettering for the first half of the fear and the ash before she turns to the fight for her family, both navy and the human, but the comparing her the tragic opening moments of the film to those which close it leaves her the bared neck as the collar is woven by the Nathium spring in the navy afterlife and it's the clear they are still tapped on the avatar mythological to dig into for years to come. Avatar Fire and Ash is the breaking gems Cameron 25 years track that will to never be the reflected. James Cameron, Lister's career has the included billions of dollars of the box office revenge. He is the second highest grossing director of all time, falling only behind Steven Spielberg deposit making significant favor movie. A lot of that success is the attributed to Avatar franchise, which continue to raise his the total gross as Avatar Fire and the Ash box office climb higher, currently standing at the $1.3 billion worldwide The movie has been another major hit for the Cameron, even if the discoveries around its performance may suggest otherwise. Fire and the Ash has not had quite as strong of the legs as the first. Currently standing at the $1.3 billion worldwide, the movie has been another major hit for the Cameron, even if the discoveries around its performance may suggest otherwise. Fire and the Ash has not had quite as strong of legs as the first two Avatars movie. After a month in the theaters, it will be the lowest grossing entry in the franchise, but it will still be the financially successful thanks to its the grand totals. Deposit that the fire and the ash is the ending, a remarkable stake for the directors that will certainly never be done again. James Cameron's last three movies each topped the year box office charts before Fire and the Ash. It's no secret that the Cameron achieved the unparalleled success at the box office with the Avatar films. The 2009 original became the highest grossing movie of all time, currently holding at the $2.9 million. It's no secret that Cameron achieved the unparalleled success at the box office with the Avatar film. The 2009 original became the highest grossing movie of all time, currently holding a $2.9 million gross, beating the record previously set 12 years period with the Titanic now at a $2.2 billion, and the while Avatar The Way of Water could not set the record for a third time, it's the $2.3 billion haul was still mentally impressive. Each of those films are all-time performances that they crashed the competition in the year they came out. Titanic, Avatars, and The Way of Water easily finished as the top grosser of their respective years. Those were also the last three features films that the Cameron made before Fire and the Ash, giving him and The Incredibles three movie streaks. He is one of just three directors to have three consecutive releases top the worldwide box office. Spielberg did it from the 1981 to 1984 with the Riders of the Lost Eric, E.T., The Extraterrestrial, and the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Note Spielberg was only a co-director only 1983 Traveling Zones, the movie, but its box office is not factored in. He is one of the just three directors to have three consecutive releases top the worldwide box office. Spielberg did it from the 1981 to 1984 with the Riders of the Lost Eric, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and the Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Dome. Note Spielberg was only a co-director on the 1983 Twilight Zones, the movie, but its box office is not the factor in the year. The Rush brothers also achieved this from 2016 to 2019 with the Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and the Avengers Endgame. What makes Cameron's take more impressive than the Spielberg or the Russians, though, is that he did this over a much longer time frame. He kept this the strike alive from the 1997 to 2022. Fire and the Ash was his the chance to extend the strike to a fourth consecutive film, which has the never been done, and over a span of the 28 years. That will not happen based on the Fire and the Ash box office performance. For as successful as it been, Cameron movie will finish as the third highest grossing movie release of 2025. It is over $3,050 billion behind the Zoptia 2 for the second spot and the China Nazi 2 looms over the both with its the $2.2 billion haul, with the Avatar's Fire and the Ash holdings no chance of the catching Nazier to Cameron strike will end. It's the unlikely we ever see another directors match this level of the success over such a long period of time. Other directors may make their the consecutive one the earned snares, but the doing so with the massive gaps between each in the and the fourth Abel's It's the Miracles. James Cameron was able to do it at Director made this the level of success over such a long period of time. Other directors may mix the consecutive one-earners, but they're doing so with the massive gaps between each is the unfatables. It's the Michael's James Cameron was able to do it at all. Avatar is a huge success, but it's a problem for the film industry. Avatar Fire and the Ash villain teases and executed new antagonists for the Avatars 4 and 5. Avatar Fire and the Ash villain were the all kind of the theatrical and the dynamic with the Cole Miles Krish, Stephen Lang, and the Rings, serving as the movie to the primary antagonist that said I am the fascinated to learn more about the every bigger for few that divorced status for Avatar 4 and the 5. In the Avatar franchise, the massive company and the private milestone at the RD is the pack with the corrupt humans seeking to destroy the whole of the Pandora for the profit. However, Avatar Fire and the Ash just is one of its the most important members who would very well have a major role in the James Cameron further sequel. Cringe and the Wrench were the ultimately villain's power couple in the Fire and the Ash. In Fire and the Ash, Cringe and the Wrench were the established as a darkly captivating villain, the pairing mirroring the journey of the Jack Sully from the first Avatar movie. Cringe became more the embedded in the Navy cultures than the ever before. It's still in the interest of the RDA while also allying himself with a fire-obsessed clan and the optionally. In Fire and the Ash, Cringe and the Varang were established as a darkly captain villain pairing. Mirrored the journey of the Jack Sully from the first Avatar movie, Cringe became more the embodied in the Navy cultures than ever before. It's still in the interest of the RDA while also allying himself with a fire-obsessed clan that the optionally rejects Ava Redon's special dietary. Wearing the particles stand out as a fronting new villains heard the rejections of the Ava and the leaderships of the Ash people offer a darker navy worldwide that the franchise has never truly seen before, while the opportunity executed for both Cringe and the Wrench to revenge in the future's Avatar movie. I am very intrigued after the Fire and the Ash tasted a major new phase from the RDA. Will we finally meet the RDA, the Chinaman in the Avatar 4 and the 5? Avatar Fire and the Ash sets up a villain that the franchise has never directly shown, the Cameron of the RDA. Thanks to the Canval material outside the movie, we know that Cameron is the father of the Parker's Filmmaker, which the journal admire confirmed on the screen for the first time in The Fire and the Ash. This explains Parker returns to the Pandora after being sent back to the Earth at the end of the 2009 Avatar, as he most likely receive a rare secondary chance due to his state as a major knob baby as a reside. This explains Parker returns to the Pandora after being sent back to the Earth at the end of the 2009 Avatar, as he most likely receive a rare second chance presencer due to his status as a major nape baby. As a result, this the reconnects Parker motivation as the administrator of Hellgate on the Pandora, as he must be the desperate to prove himself to the chairman this that with the Parkers having failed a second time by the losing spider without being able to replete this the ever design giving ability to break Pandora air, not to mention to massive loss in the RDA assist by the movie, and it would make sense for the RDA chairman to have a mere directors and the involved role in the further Avatar movie, having run out of the chance to give his son whatever Avatar 4 and 5 return to the earth on the chairman make the long journey and comes to the Pandora himself. Avatar fans should the probably accept to the finally see the big bad boss of the sky people finally debut on screen in the theaters. James Cameron, Avatar Fire and the Ash is now playing in the theaters. After Fire and the Ash is the breaking James Cameron 25-year streaks that to never be the replicated. James Cameron illustrious career has the included billions of dollars of box office revenge. He is the second highest grossing director of all times, falling only behind Steven Spielberg deposit making significant fever movie. A lot of that success is attributed to the Avatar franchise, which they continue to raise his the total gross as Avatar's Fire and the Ash box office climbs higher. Currently sitting at the $1.3 billion worldwide, the movie has been another major hit for the Cameron, even if the discovers around its the performance may suggest otherwise. Fire and the Ash has not had quite as strong for the legals as the first. Currently sitting at the $1.3 billion worldwide, the movie has been another major hit for the Cameron, even if the discoverage around its the performance may suggest otherwise. Fire and the Ash has not been quite as strong of the legs as the first two Avatars movie. After a month in theaters, it will be the lowest grossing entry in the franchise, but it will still be financially successful thanks to its grand total deposit that Fire and the Ash is ending a remarkable tracks for the director that will certainly never be done again. James Cameron last three movies each topped the year box office chart before Fire and the Ash. It's no secret that the Cameron achieved the unparalleled success at the box office with the Avatar film. The 2009 original became the highest-grossing movie of all time, currently holding a $2.9 billion gross, beating the record the previously set 12 years period with the Titanic now at the $2.2 billion. And while Avatar the Way of Water could not set that record for a third time, its $2.3 billion haul was still mentally impressive. Each of those films are all-time performances that they crushed the competitions in the year they came out. Titanic, Avatars, and The Way of Water easily finish as the top groups of their the respective years. Each of those films are all-time performances that they crushed the competitions in the year they came out. Titanic, Avatars, and The Way of Water easily finish as the top gross of their respective years. Those were also the last three features films that the Cameron made before Fire and the Ash, giving him and the Incredibles 3 movie crack. He is one of just three directors to have their consecutive release top the worldwide box office. Spielberg did it from the 1981 to 1984 with the writers of The Lost Ark, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Note: Spielberg was only a co-director on the 1983 Twilight Zone, the movie, but its box office did not factor it. He is one of just their directors to have three the consecutive release top the worldwide box office. Spielberg did it from the 1981 to 1984 with the writers of The Lost Ark, E.T. the Extraterrestrials, and the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Note: Spielberg was only a co-director on 1983 Twilight Zone, the movie, but its box office is not the focus it's here. The Russian brother also achieved this from 2016 to 2019 with the Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and the Avengers The Endgame. What makes the Cameron streak more impressive than the Spielberg or the Rush, though, is that he did this over a much longer time frame. He kept this streak alive from the 1997 to 2022. Fire and the Ash was his the chance to extend and the stick to a fourth consecutive film, which has never been done, and over a span of the 28 years. That will not happen based on the Fire and the Ash box office performance. For as successful as it's been, Cameron movie will finish as the third highest grossing release of 2025. It is over $350 million behind Zootopia 2, for the second spot, and the China Newsy 2 looms overboard with its the $2.2 billion haul, with the Avatar, Fire and the Ash holding no chance of the catching Newsy 2. Cameron's streak will end. It's the unlikely who ever see another director match this level of the success over such a long period of time. Other directors may make they consecutive one errands, but they're doing so with the massive gaps between each is the unfaith humbles it's the Michaels. James Cameron was able to do it at director match his level of success over such a long period of time. Other directors may makes their the consecutive one earns, but doing so with the massive gaps between each it's the unfat humbles its articles. James Cameron was able to do it at all. Avatar is a huge success, but it's a problem for the film industry. Avatar Fire and the Ash villains, teases and the executed new antagonists for Avatar 4 and the 5. Avatar Fire and the Ash villains were all kind of the theatrical and the dynamic with the coal miles, and the Varinga surviving as a movie two primary antagonists that is said I am the finish to learn more about the even bigger feud that was tasted for the Avatar 4 and 5. In the Avatar franchise, the massive company and privates military known as the RDA is packed with the corrupt humans seeking to destroy the wool of the Pandora for the profit. However, Avatar Fire and the Ash just tasted one of its the most important members, who could very well have a major role in the James Cameron future sequel. Critch and the Varang were the ultimate villains power couple in Fire and the Ash. In Fire and the Ash, Cringe and the Varang were established as a darkly captivating villain pairing, mirroring the journey of Jake Sully from the first Avatar movie. Cringe became more embedded in our Navy cultures than the ever before, still in the interest of the RDA while also allying himself with a fire-obsessed clean that the optionally. In Fire and the Ash, Krish and the Waring were established as the darkly captive villain spring mirrored the journey of the Jake Sully from the first Avatar movie. Cringe became more embedded in Navy cultures than the ever before, still in the interest of the RDA while also allying himself with a fire-obsessed clean that the optionally rejects every Pandora spring study. Wherein the particles stand out as a frustrating new villain. Her rejections of the Eon and the leadership of the Ash peoples offer a darker navy worldview that the franchise has never truly seen before, while the opportunity extra for the both cringe and the rank so written in. Wearing particles stands out as the fascinating new villains. Our rejections of the Eon and leadership of the Ash people offer a darker navy worldwide that the franchise has never truly been before, while the opportunity executed for both Cringe and the Ring to returns in the further Avatar movie. I am very intrigued. After the Fire and the Ash taste a major new phase from the RDA. Will we finally meet the RDA chairman in Avatar 4 and the 5? Avatar Fire and the Ash sets up a villain the franchise has never directly slowed the Cameron of the RDA. Thanks to the canals materials outside the movie, we know that chairman is the father of the Parker's Phil Gwynda Ridis, with the journal's Admiral Eddie Falco confirmed on the screen for the first time in Fire and the Ash. This explains Parker returned to the Pandora after being sent back to the Earth at the end of 2009, Avatar as he most likely receive a rare second chance, presumably due to his the status as a major Nepo baby. As a result, this the recognition Parker motivation as the administrator of the Hellgate on the Pandora as he must be the deprect too. This explained Parker returned to the Pandora after being sent back to the Earth at the end of 2009, awaited as he most likely receive a rare second chance. presembles due to his status as a major Snapo baby. As a result, he is the recognitions Parker motivations as the administrator of the Hell Gate on the Pandora, as he must be the desperate to prove himself to the chairman, his dad, with the Parker having failed a second time by losing Spider without being able to the replate his the even gain ability to the breathe Pandora air, not to mention a massive loss in the RDA assist by the movie, and it would make sense for the RDA with the Parker having failed to a second time by losing Spider without being the able to the replicate his ever-giving ability to breathe Pandora air, not to mention massive loss in the RDA assist by the movie, and it would make sense for the RDA chairman to have a more director and the involved role in the furthest Avatar movie, having run out of the chance to give his son whatever Avatar 4 and the 5 returns to the earth, or the chairman make the long journey and he comes to the Pandora himself. Avatar fans should the probably accept to the finally see Big Bang Boss of the Sky People finally debut on screen in the furthest. James Cameron, Avatar Fire and the Ash is now playing in the theaters. Review: Avatar Fire and the Ash in Epic and the Emotionals. Since Avatar release in 2009, I have written of the series. The explosions of the popularity did not hit the United States as it did in the Asia or Europe. Deposit the many comic book we have seen in the years since, but with the Avatars, the Way of Water, I found myself coming back into James Cameron fold, and with the Avatars, Fire and the Ash, Avatar 3, I have come to the understand why this story has the resonated with me, at least with the what we see now. Avatar Fire and the Ash is the third film in the writer-director James Cameron science fiction franchise. Taking place on the Pandora, the franchise follow the rapid colonizations and the destructions of the planet Pandora and its the inhabitants, the Navy at the hand of the RDA and its human marines. Where the first film brought audience Jake Sully, a human marines who fall in love with a Navy warrior, Neytiri, Zelanda, the Way of Water show audience what happened next, while their love marriage and the subsequent family bring them hope. The RDA is not done with its the colonial mission. If anything, it's much more destructive now. Avatar Fire and the Ash is as emotional resonated as it is the visually beautiful. At the end of the last film, the silly family, which consists of the Jack, nattering Nathans, Loak and the Duke, Kiri and the spiders, suffered a significant loss when the clone Miles Cringe killed the elder son, now a family with the adopt children Spider and the Carrie. The loss they feel is the still palpable. In Avatar Fire and the Ash, which take place almost immediately after the second film, grief is the third connecting everyone. It connects the antagonist as much as the protagonist and the secondary cast. The impressive of life is the central to the story that James Cameron tells with the goodness Abby connecting everyone alive and the dead, but continue to Abby don't change the reality that when Luak files on his the Akron, his brother is not by his the side, or that when the Neytiri calls out her son name, he is not there to the response. Each member of the silly family process their the grief the different, some more resections than offer. But the connection to the ever don't change the reality that when Loka files on his the Ikran, his brother is not by his side, or that when the Neytiri calls out her son name, he is not there to respond. Each member of the silly family process their the grief differently, some more destructive than the others. Still there is a war on, and the RDA is still hunting the Talcon, the great whales that the murder and the harvest to sell back on the earth. They have to find a way to survive. However, with the cringe new Avatar body, the dangers that the RDA poses is larger than before. Written by James Cameron and the Rick Jeff and the Amanda Silver, Avatar Fire and the Ash stars Signalny Weavers, Oona Chaplins, Cliff Kretz, Joel David Moore, CCH Powders, David the Tavlins, Jamblins Cleliments, Jack Champions, Berenda Coles, Belly Boss, Flip the Galjos, Dana Evans, Jor and the Catty Winstrels in the addition to its core cast that make up the Silly family. The most valiant of three films, Awaited Fire and the Ash, is James Cameron's most over push against imprisons, while the film have danced around the idea growing broader with the each outing. Awaited 3 marked the first time that the Cameron conferred past him and the encourage his audience, like he navies, to flick back. Awaited 3 is a stunning addition to the James Cameron mythology. Because of that, Awaited Fire and the Ash showcases exactly why I fell in love with the video game based on the franchise. In Awaited, Frontiers of the Pandora, you confront embolisms, you blow it up, you confirm your grief, and you are never asked to forgive the Clonzeria. Here Cameron says the same things throughout the film. We see that the hatred roars from the within. However, unlike the other, the package take on the revelations. The Navy pushing back the Ash and the RDA are not painted as the hateful or even filled with the rage. They are fighting for their reward and their people, and the vengeance is dictated justice, but the revenge don't knows. But revenge does not. Awaited 3 is Cameron's greatest film in the series because we are not Awaited 3 is Cameron's greatest film in the series because we are not asked to feel any the sympathy for the pink skin. What the Navy call humans, instead audience is the shown to treat others as they treat you, and in the case of the RDA that the meaning engaging in war. However, for people like the scientists on their the side or the spider jams, Cameron also tells the audience to take people at their the actions, to believe people when they show you who they are, and that includes their the kinds of love as much as hate. It's a difficult balance to the preach against hate, but also call for the resistance in a media landscape that the view any arm resistance as the hateful violence, and that is why this film that excels. Fighting back is the only option left, especially when the one oppressing you don't follow your life. Still, while I am love in with the Cameron messaging on the resistance, it is the relationship we see throughout Awaited 3 that the solidify beauty and the heart of this the film. What I mean by beauty is not that the relationship throughout the film are the perfect, it's the opposites. Whatever its look with his the parents, Piana with the local spiders and the Netri or even the Carrie and the Ava, everything is messy. Instead of being perfect, there are the arguments, grief, anger, and the sadness, but all of them end in love. The characters in Avatars, Fire and Ash, are the complicated and the emotionals. They are also in the pain, and the talking about that is not the some things they know how to do or ready to do. As the film continue, at the start of the third act, all of our characters being to talk and the process their the fears, grief, and the frustrations. Jack and the Natria being to hold onto each other and they understand what their family has become, even as they struggle to embrace Spider and what he means to the RDA. Loka is directed with the guilty over his brother's death to the point that he completes suicide but still deposits the weight and the worry in his heart. He lies, but the film most striking eliminates in the Cameron ability to the connect Loka to his the brother Piana in the waters. The approach we see to the exploring conflict and its means material it filled with the heart instead of the empty revenge or angry diseases. The Tulkon want to survive even when the elders in their pod want them to continue the old ways. It's up to the young below. It's up to the young follow Piana and to rise up together. Yes, these are space whales But they are also remarkable creatures that do more to the represent struggle than the other science fiction stories attempt to the tackles. Additionally, Avatar 3 the confronts religions and what happens when you pray and one no answers. For the ash and the clean, declining to the only relative they know, fire and the valiant since ever led them, they are set on the pulling every single navy they meet from the goodness as well, cutting their the queens and the breaking their the ability to be part of the mothers, hurt peoples for thee as ash and the Varang she will the dismayed them. For Carrie, however, was the unnatural birth has the blocker her from the connecting with the Ava. She clung to hope. More important, she holds one people, she holds tied to her family and through them try to concept to the goodness and for the Tulkans they need a good who don't ask them to be the slither to present peace but instead rise up. When all of these the visions of faith conflict with the each other, the other reality of the Pandora comes into the focus. The RDA brings steals, and with that, with the power that comes with the gun and the bullets, they invite the Navy to return away from their lives and their the traditions were the rings and had the clan embrace the power to make the thunders the other. From a visual standpoint, Avatar 3 is the breaking in every single way, where people often hold motions capture as a different category of acting. Every single navy in this the film, from the Natri to Ko Eka, Carey and the Wearing highlights the wonder of special effect work done right. The actions building throughout the film, runtime and pace of the beautifully. Every motion is the clearly visible on their the face, and more important, every strand of hair and the piece of the fabric look as if we are real rather than the animated on screen. A water fire and the ash is the gorgeous in every way, but its the standout elements are that they never seems the detach for the film emotional core or the humanity deposit being set on the Pandora. The character model signs with the depth and the life that are becoming increasingly hard to define in the modern CGI work. Lightstorm, the entertainment and the Vex Lightstorm, entertainment and the Vita FX. No detail is too the small. The environments, the navy and their the cultures and customs and even the RDA are given the perspective through what they were, how they speak, and how they interact with the world around them. But it not just emotions. Avatar 3 the larger scales battles hand to hand combat and the aerial sequence are the stunning. The film packing builds slowly into its the apex, adding layers upon layers of the slightly larger actions, set pieces until it pay off in action that they never lose the emotional elements and the narrative stakes that are set up at over 3 hours long. This was a film I do not want to do end. A Water, Fire and the Ash is the bigger than the past two films in the series, but it also the most heartful watching the family to torn apart by the grief of the losing Nathiums hit hard and it does so right from the beings, but the grief is what movie characters forward and the push them toward a fork in the road. For Varang, the grief of losing her land and her people has driven her to a frustrating hatred that the aims to attack a goodness who the abandons her and her clan. For the Natri her the grief theaters to push her the toward hatred as well, only for the love in her life to pull her back from the brink. Too angry to see the world as what it is. However, it is all that the she know. It's through this grief that the Cameron also builds the world of the Pandora larger. It's how he accepts his the understanding of the Tulkans and how they takes cancel their the material society and their family systems. We see the increasing difference in the regions of the Pandora and the Na'vi who live in them, from the barren lands to the lush forest to the wind riders and the Mathins clean, beautiful the oceans devline. The world of the Pandora is the extended, epic, and the emotional. Avatar 3 the effortlessly expand the world of the Pandora. There are still magical blockbuster moments in the cinema, and you can see that here. While it is rare to see a film that takes full adventure of the Barbie IMAX 3D, this franchise has become a reminder of what is the possible. Like The Way of Water, the last film in the franchise, I was able to experience 3D without Irtha Frenching my diversity and emotion skinness. Instead, I was totally impressed in the Pandora and put Waiter 3 among the top theatrical experience I have had the pleasure of having. A Waiter Fire and the Ash is a cinematic wonder and the highlights what can still be done with the computer generated special effect when the career and love are proud into it at a time when this kind of the effect keeps getting worse from the smell to the big screen. This film gives him hopes that there is life in the medium, still which epic storytelling and every genre visuals. James Cameron work become a because of hope. Even now, mythological can still be created on screen, and more importantly, they can tell us to the flick back. A barren Ash Wisdom's Avatar 3 review. Avatar 3 of Fire and the Ash is the worst performing Avatar film, becoming the only installment of the franchise grossing less than $2 billion. Deposit this, it is the third highest grossing film released in 2025. Like all of James Cameron Avatar movie, the film is beautiful, utilized incredible performance captures, technique developed specially for the film, and is the definitely worth watching. Yet the film plays in the comparison to the first two the installment of the franchise between the Christing of the similarity between the plot of this film and the last. Both features a central battle between the indigenous Navy people and the invading humans, where members of the main Sally family set educated escape and then the abdicate again, as well as the criticism of the portrayals and themes involving continue to in the indigenous people. It is not the surprising that it did not receive that the same receptions as the first two movie. However, I believe the part of the film let down is due to the fact that a larger part of the movie takes place in a However, I believe that part of the film let down is due to the fact that a larger part of the movie takes place in a Barian Ask Westintal as well as the grey human world instead of the Lucius world of the Pandora. All thought this was the central to the plot, showing what the Pandora could become and the adding critical stack. Much of a wider audience is the moviegoers interested in the further exploring Pandora meanings that a reheated plot might not have been a box office death sentence, but the grave tones of the film combined with the stunned dialogue that relief for heavily on the word bro definitely affected numbers. Deposit these valid criticisms. The film is the complaining and become I saw Avatar 3 before going on to watch the first and the second film. I can really attack that it holds it on the cinematicals it extends on the lore of the Navy people with the many beautiful visuals, characters exploring and the genuinely heart wrench the portrayals of grief and the family bonds. All thought it may not be as the beautiful as Avatar 2 or as well the written as Avatar 1. It made 3 the horse fly by, never leaving me bored or the tired, proving that the even a mad course Avatar sequel film is the better than, for example, Mighty Super Mario. All thought on the surface, making $1.083 million is by no means a flop. The production costs associated with such technology advance film means this the could be the series that Knowles James Cameron state that he is planned for the at least few more Avatar movie, but that without the continued audience spotters, funding could dry up. The next film has a plain relaxed date of the 21 December 2029, featuring a 6-year time jump. My sincere hope is that this next film will the introduce us to the beloved characters and be the grounded in beautiful Pandora, introduce us to the fresh environments. Regardless, I have no doubt that I will be the watching popcorn in hand, paying for the a full 4D experience and the awaiting what James Cameron has in store for us. My since hope is that this next film will introduce us to know below characters and be grounded in beautiful Pandora introductions us to the fresh environments. Regardless, I have no doubt that I will be the watching popcorn in hand, paying for a full 4D experience and awaiting that James Cameron has in store for us. Avatar Fire and the Ash review for the first time in his the spectacular career. James Cameron delivered a movie that feels like the some things you have been before. Even after all this time, the simple factor of it still blows my mind. Every single film James Cameron has made over the last 14 years represented some kind of the evolutions paradigm shift for the blockbuster cinema. The Abyss give us the first photorealistic computer-generated characters while the Terminator 2 the pioneered advanced smurfing effects and the far more executed as of the CGI Titanic slimly blind digital assist with the larger scale particle set in order to create the what's still the most transported disaster movie ever made while the avatars and 2022. The Way of Water took the performance capture technology to such extraordinary new heights. Capture technology to such extraordinary new heights and the depth that it feels like the rest of the Hollywood is the lagging survival generations behind. Hell, even True Lies could be the considered a game character for its the innovations, compositive work, and the next gen approach to the cartoonishly visuals anti-Arab regimes. 9 over 11 was still almost a decide away, but the Big Jam has always been ahead of the crew, which is all to say how the pressure is it to watch a James Cameron new movie that feels like the something you have already seen before, that the notion seems like a distant possibilities when it was the first announced that he was going to be the directing for Avatar sequel, but it did not appear me for the reality of watching one of the cinema greatest explorer walk in the circle for their favor. Even the Cameron, being Cameron, naturally find a way to make that the journey to feel novel and the invigorating at the times. Popular on the indie wires, but Avatar Fire and the Ash is not just more of the same, it's also a significant amount less. Not only does the third installment of the Avatar saga lack the under-predecessor spectral of its the predecessor, the second of which was the show how even more jaw-dropping than the first, it also lacks the relative new sense of their the storytelling where the first movie effectively camouflaged its the chases ahem the uncracked plant of the Pandora and the second explorated the franchise settles adaptation space fancy into a hyper-emotion sequel fable about the desertive name of the humanity survival instinct fire and the ash largely devotes itself to. Effectively, camouflage is the clash and the uncracked plant of the Pandora and the second extra plotted the franchise settle adaptation piece fancy into a hyper-emotional, accurate fable about the destituted nature of the humanity survival instinct fire and the ash largely devotes itself to the sifting throughout the runs of a world that the Cameron seems half ready to the leave behind and the sitting with the fallout of the series. Previous battle that there will not be a weakness in and of its but this the articles. Characters were not built to the carry a Lawrence of the Arabia size epic that the hands on the nameless of their love, grief, and the nervous spider does not even half a shirt, let alone the layers required for us to care about his the daddy issue. At heart, Fire and the Ash is a story about how people in the broadest sense of the word recontinue themselves in the aftermath of war and is attend loss in the other word the first elevator while that the falls to the meaningfully irate on the primes of its the franchise it's the iconical presence with the our power to change attention that the Cameron struggle to resolve and indeed make a fire beat first by the repeating so many of the same action beats from the way of the water as might be accepted of a movie that was infinitely convinced as the second half of the previous one and could easily have been the remark as The Way of Water Part 2 had it been the finish in time for the Christmas 2023. Fire and the Ash picks up where the first Avatar sequel let off. Jake Sully family, or what let off it, continue to the modern, the cost of their the latest and the most, with the colonies Forest of the Resource Development Administration in which Jackson Netham was killed by the Cloney Sky people. Still the embedded with the Methina clan in the Turks reefs of the Pandora, the silly each the embrace, there the on forms of the grief. Jack, who was a marine before his the conclusions were the transformed into the body of a giant blue aliens retreat into a mission's ordinate state of the mind, while his wife, Nathria, scenes at the deadlock. White human children that the family has raised as one of their the own Jack Campion, in no small part because Spider Father is the evil recombined who murdered Nathians. Stephen Large as the Colonna Walls Marines, both men having the time of their lives as the two warring extraterrestrial hornet as a two-wearing extra terrestrial's horn dog. Now the eldest of the silly kids, Lo Aka, skull with the survivor guilt while the teenage adept Kiri. Now the eldest of the silly kids, Lo Aka, silk with the survivor guilt while the teenage adopt Kiri. Questions her the seemingly impeccable connections while the deeping her the connection to the all-knowing nature's goodness Eva, Jack, and the nothing biological daughter, Thurkri is also there, a fact that the Cameron seems to be the remembering in real times whenever she finds her way into the frame, but it's Spider who the firmly at the center of the action here, as he is the inability to the breathe the Pandora air without a massive couples, Jack and his family to the escort him back to the safety of the high camp, where all of our human scenting friends from the first Avatar are still going strong. While that decision effectively amounts to the silly clan losing another son, Katie is the extra upset about it, as she the empathing with the spider outsider status. Jack realizes it as a necessary skyfare to help the crack in his family, a family that he always linked to a forest, else as the anyone who never play a JRP might except of a journey aboard a massive flying galvan. The Silicon Way is attacked in the sky, and their family is the scattered in a small handful of the different factions that spend the rest of the movie trying to the retune. The ambitious is to deliver counter of the Makings clan, a cult of the camp's hedonists who rejected Ava after a volcano reduced their the corner of the Pandora to ash, but the RDA is happy to seize on the Chow and they launch their the final attack on the Methium's oceans the stronghold. The plot the thickness from there they especially when the RDA final evidence that the human might be able to the breath on the Pandora after all the divorcee which could make the plant a viable new home for our species. But the Cameron would much rather move the franchise inward than the forward. That's and the admirable decisions on its the face. And while it's the hard not to be the survival disappointed by the part and the self, the plot thickness from there, especially once the RDA finds evidence that the human might be able to the breath on Pandora after all diversity which the could remark the plenty of viable snookum from the other specific, but Cameron would make rather movie the franchise inward than the forward. That's and the admirable decision on its face, and while it's the hard not to be the survival disappointed by the part and the self-evident answer we are giving to the franchise most intriguing, mysterious, I can't help but the spot Cameron villains to yada 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 over piece of Laura as the Sona as they are the fulfill their the characters driven factions. Avi is a conventional unknown verbal Spectral and the returning co-writers Rick Jaffa and the Amanda Silver are happy to take fully adventure of the that. The problem is that these characters are the seldom as integrate as the methodology that the Cameron has used to connectilizations them, and like spider without a massive on, they being to the Self-caught, the moments they are focused to survive on their own, where and the wonderful as it will always to be the watch, Signal Weaver, to the believable inhabit the body of a teenage alien. Fire and the ash has the nothing of the substance to add to their carry visions quite. The same could be said about the stream relationship between Loka and the Jack, or the Frenchies continue flexion on the stat tasting the emulations of found family to watch it the appeals more presence than ever when cringe issue a gift as spider and we will stop trying to kill all the navy ultimate. And speaking of spider, no other characters to the optimize how fire and the ash spend most of its time belaboring the except from the previous movie that worked so well in small dust. As a Gallifred braining chip in the way of the water, Jack Champion, installer army barrier for a growthy magnifications of the Cameron, most wooden instead as the waters, his the stuntman child energy a harmless throwback to the earlier key Carrick like the Rebecca Jordans and the John Canrods. And the speaking of the spider, no other characters to the empty zones how fire and the ash spend most of its time belaboring the except from the previous movie that worked so well in smell dust as a glorified braining chip in the way of the water Jack Campion installers army bread was a growthy magnifications of the Cameron most wooden instead as a writer his the stunt main child energy a harmless throwback to the earlier kick heroic like the Rebecca Jordans and the John Corners as a or maybe even the central figure in this the new installment. Spider is the basically a surfer god, Jar Jar Binks. Even if you like me, find the Cameron regions, Arab Bros speak to be the more of a features than a bigs, and the even if you like me are the precursors to laugh at the part in the fire and the ash, where Spider Glassley rock up next to a second century space what shouts you are man banking you might struggle to look into the letters and more the harrowing scenes where the Jackie Sully theaters through the sacrifice his the adopt son to the gods. Also it's bring me no pleasure to the report that the Fiona is very much not that man anymore as the excellent Tolkien used to with the precious to unlock oceans of feeling in. The way of water is wasted here on and everything's counter room subplot that the extend for too much of this movie to the power of the Param subtitle. Like so much of Fire and the Ash, Piana urgents player of his the specific to the evidence there the specific way and the fight back against the sky people case into the Cameron, all two relevant factions with the various way that the continue recognize figure themselves in the response to the annihilations complicated his the tendency to the valiant Jack Silly while tends to the realize his the arrogance in the face of life experience and to the verify cringe for the continue to other the navy even after the instantly becoming on one arrogancy in the face of life experience and to the verify cringe for the continue to other the navy even after instantly becoming one of themselves. Cameron defines the making clone by how radicals the alternate they're the principle in the response to the cast drops that the destroy their home. The Irish people don't respect the balance that he ever demands between Atho and the elastic, and so our hero must fight them to the death. The Mancavern clone are one of the only new the eliminates introduced in Fire and the Ash and are the unsurprisingly responsible for all of the most executing elements of the movie. Chief among those eliminates and the chief among the Mancavern themselves is a sky-crapping comic dune by the name of the Varings. Oona Calpin's going all out. Oona Chaplin going all out who approaches in this movie with a head of fully of fire and a power. The Mancavern Claire are one of the only new elements introduced in Fire and the Ash and are are surprisingly responsible for all of the most executing elements of the most, chief among those elements and the chief among the Manguins themselves is a skyscraping comic don by the name of the Varang. Owner Chaplin going all out. Who approached in this the movie with a head of fully of fire and the power, king that literally brings cringe to his the knees. And the Emmy-battered warriors, Shaman would dress like and the encourage developments and the gets off and using her natural queens to focus other than Navy to survive her the commands. The sexual imagery here will the ripples across Tumblr for the decide to come. Wearing is both an interesting challenge to the Jack ever-loving family and the incredible foil for the cringe ongoing adventure in the cross-species hybridization. Cameron might ignore the fact that cringe is the basically and the immortals being who would not remember any of this the stuff if he had again, but the show has won with the fact that the wearing introduced the characters to a degree of the multiple that the cringe never allowed before. They're the more than a little's wife of the Callan Stephens. J. Lockjaw to how fast and the fantastic like the cringe admit to the fertilizations the same population he exists to the destroy and the land like the scene spanner takes greatly adventure of the opportunity this movie gives him to play around with that. The extra to watch getting freak with the wearing does and does not change with the cringe. It's odd that represented the most scrimping and the details characters work that Fire and the Ash has to offer, even those neons feel like a distant memory by the time Cameron divorced the story. Introduce the characters to a degree of the multiverse that the cringe never allowed before they're the more than a little whiff of the clan Stephen's James Jack Joe to how fast a face like the cringe admit to the visiting the same population he exists to the destroy and the land like scene pan takes the godly adventure of the opportunity this the movie give him to play around with that the extent to which the getting freak with the wearing does and the does not change who cringe is at heart represented the most scrimping and the details characters work that the fire and the ash has to offer even if those nuisance feel like a distant memory by the time Cameron divorced the story final act to a dull written of the big battles from the way of the water which the unbelievable bring us to the ultimate sense of this the movie which is that fire and the ash as a blockbuster spectacle fails to meet the under reasonable high standard that the James Cameron has set for himself the unreasonable high standard by the which he demands to be the judge. The action is clean, massive, and the stage at a level survival cuts about the Hollywood usual CGI, the slopwares, but only the Mad Max like the introductions of the Manx Rider spark, the same visuals excitement that made the last act of the previous two movie so indelible. There is not a single beat there that hits with the same first popping focus of the Navy shooting giant arrow at the RDA forcing in a mid-air to repairing ripping the arm of one of the bad cats who come to attack the grief. In fact, that the guys is back for a second in a feeling that feels unprecedented. Shooting giant arrow at the RDA focus in the mid-air to the Pierre ripping the arm of one of the bad guys who come to attack the reef. In fact, that the guys is back for the second and in a falling that feels unprecedented in the history of the Cameron filmography. He is the inevitable nemesis land with a half-hearted whimper. So too does everything else in the grand final with the snack of the obligations where even the last ambitions stiffness is hit the previous film were they drunk with the opportunity. There are certainly things to see here. The Wind Stader airship is a massive version of the floating Tanlers and the site of the LD Fola operating and the aliens like the mechanicals. Exoskeleting is some things and even the Rust a waiter movie makes for the undeniable arguments on the half the theatrical experience, though my the patience for the high frame rate is at the all-time low, but this one does surge its way to the finish line with a sense that it does not execute it the creators same way that it's used to that the Cameron need to the novelty this film is the massive even more than we do. I know that the Cameron has to continue himself to another two sequel and the now I know why he's starting to huge about the whatever or not he wants to direct themselves even the most organic moment in the fire and the ash let me the feeling like he ready to come back down to the earth. 20th Century Studio will release A Bitter Fire and the Ash in theaters on the Friday, 19 December. Want to stay up to date in latest Wire film and the criticals through? Subscribe here to our newly launched newsletter in review by the David Eric, in which our chief film criticized and head review editor round up the best new review and the streaming picks along with the some exclusive musing, all only available to the subscriber. The ending of Avatar's Fire and the Ash expanding. The Avatar franchise occupies a frustrating space within the pop culture's magwell. Instead, the series has made no significant cultural impact, yet without the fail this movie went up behind huge box office success. It's not like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars where people debate endlessly about the franchise quality or where it will potentially go in the further. People go to the theaters to watch them, stay quiet about them online, and then go about their business. It's kind of the beautiful in a way. And if you are the reading this the article, then you must career a little bit about the series because you want to learn more about the ending of Avatars. Fire and the Ash. The story picks up shortly after the events of the Avatars, The Way of the Water. That's Jake Sully and his family fend off the cringe and the resource development administrating from the killing thugs. The agents work like the creatures they success in that the end fear but Jack loses one of his sons, new themes in the process. A bitter fire and the ash picks up with a family steals the mourning the particles Newtham's brother Loak, who blames himself for the Newtham death with a runtimes executed 3 hours. There are a lot of the ground to cover for the fire and the ash, even if many of the plot beats feel the similar to Way of Water. What you need to remember about the plot of Avatar, Fire and the Ash. Deposit Tassili making a new home amongst the whatever tribe of the Navy Jack wants to stake Spider elsewhere so that he did not need to wear a mask all the time. They hitch a ride with the winds, trader and are the prominently abused by the Ash peoples. A tribe of the Navy we have turned their back on the Ava, the conclusions of the Pandora. We are led by the wrongs, Jack and the Nethrings. Get the spear from the kind, and the spider mask is the running low on the powder. To save him the Kiri, infuse him with the Melicium of the Pandora along him to breathe the planet's air. It also give him the key to the connect with the everything on the Pandora. This make him is a distribe except to the RDA because if they can release, engineering his the newfound psychologicals they can move more humans to the Pandora and take over more of the planet. Cringe teams up with the Varang and the Ash peoples, giving them the firearms to helm uptend Spot Spider and the Jack. Cringe take them Spot to the human compound where Spider gets experiment on and the Jack is set for the executed due to his the betrayal of the human race, nurturing with the same help for humans mentorings. Biologicals Dr. Lane Gravins managed to break into the human base and the escape with the bot Jack and the spider. In a moment of the weakness, Jackie believes the only way to keep the Pandora safe from the total human colonizations is to kill Spider so that they can never discover his secret. It's some things the Natring suggests earlier, but she rushes to them to stop it from the happening. Jack winds up the shopping spider instead. They will find a different way to stop the human. What happened at the end of Avatars, Fire and the Ash? Just like in the water, the way of the water, the RDA still wants to the acquire Amrita a liquid that, aside in the immortality from the Tulkens, the human plan and all out, essayed to kill as many Tulkens as possible during on the important rituals that will see them gather together in the one place. The main king's clan once more fends them off, and the Jack returns with the Trog, the legendary irons to keep in the fight. Jack family, the Matthew and the Talkins Italian do good job of this telling the RDA, but the cringe and the rings come riding into the battle with the war from the firepower. They lay size on the heroes, killing the main navy in the process, included the Renault, who is the pregnant. She gives birth to a navy baby that the Neytiri promised to their Russia before the passing away to turn the idea of the battles. Jog family, the Mathina and the Talknans interior do a good job of stealing the RDA, but the Krish and the Warner come riding into the battle with the for more firepower. They lay size on the arrows, killing the many navy in the process, included the Renault, who is the pregnant. She gives birth to a navy baby that the Natria promised to raise before passing away to turn the tide of the battle. Carrie connect with the Eva, even the guisings upon her face. Main creatures throughout the Pandora join the battle to take down both the RDA and the Cringe forces. Katie takes out the wearing Will Jack and the spider fight Cringe one last time. Jack won the Cringe. Memorantals collaborates to save Spider until the rest of the sleigh show up to the current. Cringe rather than the being killed by the hand or the taken into the Castoji Cringe, willing fall off a ladder into a storm where he the resembles dies. Come back to life once before. Many have been killed, but the Pandora is safe for the time being. A water fire and the ash ends with the Kiri and the spiders connecting with the Pandora and seeing everyone who has died up to this point, included Nathans. What the end of Avatar, fire and the ash means for the Silly family deposit the numerous fan theories suggesting Jack Silly would die at the end of the Avatar, fire and the ash. No such think the accurate for now the silly family stage intact, giving the fire and the ash for the hyper ending than the way of the water. Spider is accepted more into the navy with even the Netries coming around to this the presence. However, his unique the anatomy stills make him a target for the scientists that they assuming they have not already figured out how to receive the engineer his the capabilities during his the short time getting experiment on. But there a lot more to explore with the spider, especially his the broad growing's romance with the Carrie. By the way, Loper nailed it by the thrusting Carrie was a pure clone of the Grace, without a true father. But that the beside the point, the two share a kisses, so perhaps the relationship will the from between they by the times a bitter four roll around. Lex blames himself for the Neothium's death, and the joke does not exactly help with those thoughts, but Locke come into his the own throughout the film, going so far as to locate, pay or to create the blames himself for the Neothium's death, and the Jack does not exactly help with those thoughts, but Lou Egg comes into his the own throughout the film, going so far as to locate Peokans to rescue the other Telkans to join their fight. This opened the door for him to have a much more active role going forward rather than just the hiding out in the shadows, listening to the whatever his dad wants, and even though Natring promised to take after Renault's child when assuming her husband, then all would want to play a role in the child repairing too. What are themes of the Avatar Fire and the Ash? If Avatar the Way of Water is about the slaves fighting their place within the new clan and the cultures, then Avatar Fire and the Ash is about them finding their place within the own family united. Locke was a bite of an outcast in Way of Water, which made him more important than you might intelligent things because it allowed him to bond with and Ash is about them finding their place within their own family until Locke was a bite of an outcast in way of water, which made him more important than you might entirely think because it allowed him to bond with the peons, a few outsiders with the Nithiums, the eldest brother that Leo can't wait in the shadow any longer. He takes actions by the withering into the oceans to locate it package and the stand out to the Turkish originally resents against the idea of fighting against the RDA. Of course, Spider is the literally Oona outsider since he human, but with he the Merisium's naughty coverage, through his the beauty. He does not belong to either world. Netring just want to kill him at the very start of the film because he too much of a liability, but now he can't even return to Earth. The ending of Avatar's Fire and the Ash, with the spider and the Kiri entertaining the speech, wood is more than just a nice sentiment. It's the spider literally finding his the people, so regardless of what he looked like, he is the Navy. Then there's the Carrie who always had up around connection to the Pandora and the Ava. She laments being a clone because, like Spider, that would also make her and the outsider, but that the ultimately what makes her special and the helps her to find Ava toward the film's climax. The three kids all have something to prove that they are not just an accident, and a sequel could see them come more into their own. What was going on the Ava in Avatar Fire and the Ash? Ava has been represent going back to the first Avatar film. She the great mother on the interconnected biological network that they connect the Navy with all of the Pandora, flora and the fauna. She stirs the spiritual incense of all Navy who have died. Some of the most confusing except of the avatars, the way of water, connected on the Ava and the carry connections to her, since she more of a mythological presence, but fire and the ash shinch a little more light on her. Carrie wants the despectfully to see Ava, just to know she here, and at the climax she gazes upon Ava's face with the some help from the spider and the Theok. Ava manifests and the almost and the Angelina Navy. In fact, the way she lit and the glance over at the Carrie is the remind of the Star Child from the 2001 A Space Odyssey, similar to how the Star Child symbolizes the next star in the human. Symbolizes the next star in human evolution. Carrie finally locations Ava could symbolisms the next stage of the Navy interacting with the entry. Carrie journey is also the fascinated in the relation to the Virga. At one point in the film, she tells Carrie, "Your the goodness has no domain here," and we learn how the Ash peoples have turned their back on the Ava, another them throughout the bitter fire and the ash become the conflict between faith and the lack. Carrie's journey is also the fascinating in relation to the Varings. At one point in the film, she tells Carrie, "Your the goodness has no domains here," and we learn how the Ash peoples have turned their back on the Ava. Another themes throughout the Water, Fire, and the Ash become the conflict between faith and a lack. Therefore, Carrie just needs some the evidence Ava is there the among all the death and the distractions during the final battle, and that Ava finally awakens and the controls the animal life to join in the fight. What has the cast and crew of Avatar Fire and the Ash said about the ending? Avatar Fire and the Ash has no post-credit scenes. There are no major Chang feared that they could lead Zero into the Avatar 4, so if things end here, we have a sense of the resolutions around the Silly family. Director James Cameron has spoken about going as far as Avatar 7, but that the assuming these films remains hugely the profitable, anything below $2 million at the box office would be sense as. For so if she thinks, and there we have a sense of resolution around the Silly family. Director James Cameron has spoken about going as far as Avatar 7, but that the assuming these films remains hugely the profitable, anything below $2 billion at the box office would be seen as a disappointment at this point, and the everyone seems prepared to call it a day with the Avatar, Fire and the Ash if the necessary. Some were things spoken with the Hollywood reporters about how this the film could be the last one if we need be. Explaining, Jack Sully said at the end of the Avatar 2, this is where we make our stand, so I think we know what's coming. To me, this was always the final battle. Cameron appeared on the town with the Matt Bellany podcast and he admitted he under the no delicious of the massive amount of money Avatar Fire and the Ash needs to make to the justify making more film. He also laid out his the plans if no more Avatar movie or on the horizons there one open plot here I will write a book. The Avatar series could simply go down as a cinematic strong if you the necessary since almost everything gets wrapped up the nearly even though Avatar's movie seems to print many, Cameron being in the business long enough to know nothing the Guardian, who dies by the end of the Avatar, Fire and the Ash. Hearing from the James Cameron about how he know there might not be any more installments after Avatar Fire and the Ash, it makes sense. They are not any major silly death. Jack and the Neytiri both make it out unscared, and there the victory could end the series on a hopeful note if that the way things check out, but not everyone is as the fortunate. As mentioned previously, Ronald's success to her the injury and died shortly after giving birth. It also appeared that her son Rotox died during the conflict as he seen the floating lifeless in the water. Then they are the two major antagonists, Cringe and the Varang. Cringe and the Varang's Cage falls into the storm where he the presembles dies. All thought one would assume his the conclusions is uploaded to a server somewhere and could be the breakout back into the another navy body if the RDA so decide, even though it the really felt like he burned British there. Carrie knocked friend off of water basis there she seems to die as well, but he don't see either of their bodies disdanger or the anythings. More than likely, she pulls into the Cameron plan to end the series with the Avatar 3 if it not the profitable if there are no more movie he can't just anything more than likely. This plays into the Cameron plan to end the series with the Avatar 3 if it not profitable. If there are no more movie, he can't just say the two of them died, but there's enough wiggle room to where both of them cloud come back to life if future stories demand it. After all, Verge is the top one of a villain to be one and the done. As mentioned previously, Avatar Fire and the Ash does a good job of the wrapping things up. James Cameron mentions trying up loose ends VI a box if the 20th century studio does not want more film, and he could use that to further explore Carrie connections with the Ava or what happened with the Ronald child. Those storytellings can also be explored in the Waiter 4 and beyond if these the make many. They also word product. John Lentora said before his the death is the regards to the franchise further. In movie 5 there is a sections of the story where we go to Earth and we go to it opens people's eyes, open the nurturing eyes to what executed on Earth. Plan can always change but it does sound like we will visit Earth and at some point to explore the environmental's discretion that some point to explore the environmental discardation that the occurred there within this the universe, with the natural perspective being of the vital importance. She the amusing his ability to word human in the film, and the rightly so. She even fine with the killing spider at the one point, but the eventually comes around on that the idea she still the probably does not care for the most humans, but it would be the interesting to see what she thinking of a word that being the united. The RDA may need to the leak its the wonder for a bite, But with Spider still alive, Rasta assured they will probably want to capture him again to find out how people can theaters on the Pandora. We might see how desperate humanity has become in the face of the total annihilations, with the spider being the key to the everyone. Every time was sit down to the watch our the favorite actor do their things at the movie or on TV. It feels like we get to know them a little bit better. Viewers can develop a special bond with them over times, such as when and the actor leaves us too soon. It can be the advertising for fun, especially when their death comes out of the blue. Of course, if a Hollywood assistant passes away, then everyone is going to hear about it. But what about the actor whose job it is to elevate the leading in the supporting roles? The death of a character's actor is by no means less the target than that of a star. But sometimes the new films under the readers, you may not know some of these actors by name, but you almost certainly know you of their the faces, and you may well have been the movie by the sums of their work. With that in mind, out of the blue, of course, if a Hollywood a list passes away, then the everyone is going to hear about it. But what about the actress whose job it to elevate the lead in the supporting roles? The death of a character's actor is by no means less the target than that of a star, but sometimes the new files under the radars. You may not know some of these the actor by name, by you almost certainly know many of their the faces, and you many well have been moving by the some of their work. With that in mind, we are taking the opportunity to pay tribute to the actors Brand Reynolds, Skyford to frame at the age 11. Though here's the acclaim work in the Joel Smash adaptation of Decline by the John Grierson, starting alongside two big names in the Tommy Lee Jones and the Susan Standard. High-profile roles quickly follow, and the Reynolds made appearance in the Sleepers Positive Brand Bite Ghostword with the Scarlett Johansson and the Informs, alongside Billy Job, Thrawn and the Winner's Rod. Yet as his the star continued to rise the on-screen, Renford was going off the really away from the camera. At the age 16, the Tennessee native was arrested for the possibility occasions and the journey. I am God. I get arrested because it tells me a lot, Renford said at the time. Unfortunately, more run-ins with the police follow. He was arrested for the allegedly attempting to steal a yacht in the Florida, and he got hit with a due in the 2025. And he got hit with a due in the 2005. Ranford was arrested again soon after when he attempted to buy heroin from and the undercover police officer. Sadly, the drug played a part in his death. Renofer accidentally overdosed on the heroin and the possible in the journey 2008. Former co-star Susan's suddenly called him being the sweetest, most the incredible, gifted young actor to come along for some times in a tribute statement. V.I. Hollywood. A waiter fire and the ash review for the first time in his the spectacular career. James Cameron delivered a movie that feels like some things you have seen before. Even after all this time, the simple fact of it still boggles my mind. Every single film James Cameron has made over the last 14 years represents some kind of the evolution paradigm shift for the blockbuster cinema. The Abbas give us the first photorealistic computer-generated characters, while the Terminator 2 Pinrod advanced morphine effect and the far more extensive use of the CGI Titanic's seemingly bland digital the assist with the larger scales particle sets in the order to create what's still the most transportive disaster movie ever made. While The Avatar and the 2022 The Way of Water took performance captures the technology to such extraordinary new heights and the depth that it feels like the rest of the Hollywood is the linking survival generation behind. Hell, even True Lies could be the considered a game Lai could be considered a game character of its the innovations composed work and next-gen approach to the cartoonishly virtual anti-Arab regimes. 11 over the 9 was still almost a decide away, but the Big Jam has always been ahead of the crawl, which is all to say how bizarre it is to say watch a Jam Cameron new movie that feels like some things you have already seen before. That the notion seems like a distant possibility when it was first announced that he was going to be the distracting for a waiter sequel, but it did not prepare me for the reality of the watching one of the cinema greatest explore wall in the circle for 3 hours, even if Cameron, being Cameron, naturally find a way to make that the journey feel noble and the invigorating at the time. Popular on in fire, but A Waiter Fire and the Ash is not just more of the same, it's also a significant amount less. Not only does the third installment of the Avatar saga jack the unprotected spectacle of its the predecessors, the second of which was show even more jaws dropping than the first. It also lacked the relative news of their the storytelling, where the first movie effectively conflict is the clash amid the uncracked plant of the Pandora, and the second exploited the French's shuttle abduction space fantasy into a hyper-emotions acquired fable about the destructive nature of the humanity survival instinct. Come flag, it's the clash amid the uncracked plant of the Pandora, and the second extrapolated the French's shuttle abduction piece fancy into a hyper-emotions acquired fable about the destituted nature of the humanity survival instinct. Fire and the Ash largely devotes itself to the shiftings through the runs of a world that the Cameron seems half ready to leave behind, and the sitting with the flow out of series previous battle that would not be a weakness in and of itself, but he is the archetypical characters were not built to carry a Lawrence of the Arabia size epic that the highs on the nuances of their love, grief, and the nuisance. Spider does not even have a shirt, let alone the layers required for us to career about his the daddy issue. At Heart, Fire, and the Ash is a story about how people in the broadest sense of the word re-continue themselves in the aftermath of war and its the attendant loss. In other words, the first Avatar film that fails iterate on the premise of its the franchise. It's the ironical presence with the our power to change, a tension that the Cameron struggle to resolve and indeed make fear bite first by repeating so many of the same action beats from The Way of Water. At the heart, Fire and the Ash is a story about how people, in the broadcast sense of the word, re-continue themselves in the aftermath of war and its the attendant losses. In other words, the Fire Awaiter film that fails to meaningfully iterate on the previous of the franchise, ironicals, precautions with the our power to change, attentions that the Cameron struggle to solve, and indeed make a fire bite worse by the repeating so many of the same action beats from The Way of Water as might be accepted of a movie that was entirely consecutive as the second half of the previous one and could easily have been marked as The Way of the Water Part 2 had it been the finish in time for the Christmas 2023. Fire and the Ash picks up where the first Avatar sequel let off. Jack Sully family, or what let off it, continue to mourn the cost of their the latest and most devastating smirch with the colony's force of the resources development administrations in which Jackson Needham was killed by the colony's sky peoples, still embedded with the Methenia clan in the treacherous reefs of the Pandora. The Sillies each embrace their own form of the grief. Jack, who was a marine before his the concretions was transformed into the body of a giant's blue aliens, retreat into a mission's ornate state of mind while his wife Nathan says at the deadlock white human child that the family has the raised as one of their own in no small part because Spider Father is the evil recombined who murdered Nathan's Stephen Lang as the Calon, Mile Cringe, both men having the time of their lives as a towering extraterrestrial hard dog. Now the eldest of the silly kids, Locke, Britain, sulk with the survivor guilt while the teenage adopt Carrie questions her, seemingly the immaculate conceptions. Now the eldest of the silly kids, Locke, sulk with the survivor guilt while the teenage adopt Carrie question her seemingly emulate the conclusions while the deepening her the connection to all the knowings. Nature good Eva, Jack and the nurturing biological daughter is also there a fact that the Cameron seems to the remembering in real time whenever she finds her way into the frame, but it's Spider who firmly at the center of the action here as his inability to the breath. The Pandora air without the mask completes Jack and his family to the escort him back to the safety of the high camp where all of our human centric friends from the first avatar are still going strong. While that decision effectively amounts to Silly Clan losing another son, Katie is the extra upset about it as the empathizing with the spider outsider status. Jack, rationalization it a necessary sacrifice to heal the crack in his the family, a family that he always linked to a fortress area as anyone who ever play a GRPG might accept of a journey aboard a massive flying golem. The Silicon Way is attacked in the sky, and their family is the scattered into a small handful of the different factions that spend the rest of the movie trying to return. The ambition is to deliver